Hello, it's an honor to be here. My name is Alexandra Lloyd. I'm head of AML at YouHodler, which is a global fintech problem where we have Web3 wallet services, fiat and crypto conversions, cold wallet integration, and leverage trading with different product offerings across multiple licensing regimes from Switzerland, Italy, and Spain to Argentina. All that to say, I spent more time thinking about crypto regulations than is probably healthy, including the much discussed MiCA. All of these licenses and global plans on YouHodler's side means that while some people have hobbies, I have frameworks. Honestly, I think my life in British girls' sporting school really prepped me for this, with the strict rules, constant assessments, fierce competition, weirdly specific demands, and unshakable fear that someone's going to take away my passports. We're not just navigating MiCA. At YouHodler, we're translating it into code, products, and real-world decisions. Okay, now if you've ever tried to explain MiCA or DORA to anyone, or work out how it's
if your reputation affects a live onboarding though, you should know that it isn't just a policy challenge, it's actually a design challenge. One that affects how we build products, structure teams, and think about risk. Now, I know we're here to talk about the future of blockchain, but let's be honest, our future is currently being shaped by regulations. Not just MiCA, but DORA, DAC-8, TFR, ESG2, ESG obligations, and a dozen other acronyms. I want to make the case today that design thinking, the same thinking you have in a fashion studio or a UX sprint, is not only helpful in compliance, it's essential. Because these regulations are here, they're complex, and they're not going away. So you should stop treating them like annoying homework and start building with them in mind from day one. That means you have to start with empathy, understanding real-world use cases, mapping the pain points, and designing systems that solve those problems elegantly. As Brian Lee said, design is a form of risk management, and in our world, risk management is very much a design problem. So, how do we align consumer protection, business agility, and legal obligations without turning onboarding into an extra scenario? Well, we start by stopping treating compliance as a yes-no gate at the end of the sprint. The more effective and only sustainable approach is to integrate compliance into the design of your products, systems, and maybe even teams. And that applies just as much post-build when you're designing marketing campaigns, because they too have to meet regulatory standards. Design thinking starts with empathy. That means not just understanding your user, but your regulator, your legal team, your product manager, your engineer with 400 DORA tickets. It's a collaborative, iterative approach focused on real-world constraints, and it's how we need to approach regulations, both at YouHodler, where I can learn about it, and at every other firm. Let's take onboarding as a case. Most jurisdictions are following FATF standards, sure, but the local quirks will test your patience. In Switzerland, you need a machine-readable zone of ID verification, unless it's a Swiss ID. If your Swiss entity has Brazilian compliance, that can exclude most users. Different regulators may specify different electronic signature standards, so between the EU and Switzerland, or take different standards for geolocation technology. That's not just compliance, that's a UX problem. If you don't structure onboarding to be as uniform as possible, with jurisdictional variations in mind, we create friction, frustration, and ultimately failure. And we also have to structure our companies the same way. YouHodler established a dedicated product stream to manage the customer journey in relation to a continuous flood of overlapping regulatory changes, a structural change to how we build, because borrowing resources will just create tension and disruption. You can't expect your core tech team already working on customer features, but also handle things like travel rule integrations, onboarding logic, segregation of flows, and reporting tweaks without something breaking. Having a dedicated stream means you can resource these things properly, prioritize them rationally, and most importantly, avoid building something 80% before getting distracted. But that doesn't mean everyone else gets to ignore compliance. It's still got to be represented in the product development brainstorms. And mapping dependencies between teams is non-negotiable. Whether you're building a travel rules solution, a you better know what task depends on what and who. And you better pull them in for the collaboration early, otherwise you'll be rebuilding it in 6 months in a panicked Slack thread with an empty coffee machine.
So how would we navigate this?
Design thinking gives us some tools. We start with energy from everyone to the regulators to clients, and then we map the problems. What needs to happen? In what order? What information is mandatory and for whom? Which flows need to be auditable? What steps must involve human oversight versus automation? Instead of treating compliance as a roadblock, we should treat it as a design constraint. Designing compliance means asking, what is the user journey from onboarding through reporting? What data do we actually need to collect, like a car, and when? What information must be verified externally? How do we structure flows to meet both business goals and regulatory obligations? And then you have to build a flowchart for your team. Treat compliance like the systems engineering problem that it actually is. So much of the frustration around compliance comes down to when it's introduced. Too often, it shows up at the end when the product's already live. That creates friction, reworks, and internal tension between teams. But if you bring it into the product design phase early, it can become an enabler of good decisions and innovation.
So, with mapping, what we've done is break compliance requirements down from a product perspective at the start. What's actually mandatory in final outputs? What data formats do we need? Where can we reuse information? And where do we need external verification? What needs to go into the audit trail, and at what point is human approval required? If you don't think about these questions at the beginning, you'll be dealing with a lot more of them urgently and chaotically at the end. Designing compliance isn't making nice slides, and I'm sorry about mine. It's about structuring compliance to ensure user and colleague experience instead of obstructing it. For example, AML onboarding flows should be built with tax reporting in mind. Don't bolt it on later. Define your data strategy early. Understand what's needed, where automation makes sense, and where human review is still essential. Create prioritization matrices and dependency maps so compliance gets treated as a part of the delivery process, not as an emergency. Other key exercises include designing clean data funnels, especially for onboarding and ESG, breaking requirements down by output type, thinking ahead about audit trail requirements, user segmentation, and what data is reusable, and designing it in. To summarize, don't treat compliance as a bolt-on. That doesn't just lead to poor design, it leads to expensive design debt. Design debt could be exemplified on a macro scale by sustainability disclosures under MiCA, which are still evolving due to lack of coordination and standardization. ESMA's guidelines remain vague, and industry leadership is essential here. We're working with MiCA Crypto Alliance, who's trying to develop standardized templates for environmental reporting, because if we don't try to define it as an industry, someone else will, and possibly with less context. And on a side note, we shouldn't forget formatting. In Spain, your tax report might fail because of a comma, where a decimal point should be. In Argentina, it could be the inverse. These aren't minor annoyances, they're real risks, because bad formatting leads to failed uploads, and failed uploads lead to regulatory friction. Again, design matters, and we're not operating in a unified landscape, even within the EU. Work out the criteria before you design a database. Now, I get asked a lot, what's harder, MiCA or DORA? DORA, hands down. Cybersecurity standards are reasonable. Who's going to argue against basic cybersecurity? With the Lazarus Group waiting in the wings? But the documentation burden is massive, with requirements written in a way that's largely favoring large financial institutions. If MiCA's a beast, DORA's the Hydra. Cybersecurity is complex enough on its own, but DORA doesn't stop at implementation, tricking firms to thinking they're compliant because they have operational resilience. It's not just a tick-the-box exercise, but dozens and dozens of pages of rigorously detailed, regulator-readable internal procedures and policies. And here's the truth. You can't really outsource DORA. You can hire the best external counsel in the world. They can't write your cybersecurity policy for you. They don't know your tech stack. They don't know your escalation tree. They don't know how your backup and incident response systems actually function. Your engineers can write brilliant code, but ask them for a formal policy or procedure, and you'll probably get back some bullet points. We now have to translate technical controls into regulator-ready language. To meet DORA, you need true collaboration between legal, compliance, ops, and cybersecurity. It forces you to translate technical reality into regulatory clarity. And you have to work out who can serve as internal interpreters and bridge the engineers' scenarios with your CISO speaking in threat models and lawyers who need policy clauses. AI is often being sold as the fix-all for compliance, and critically essential though it is to incorporate as efficiently as possible, we have to be careful because compliance needs explainability still. If your AI flags a transaction but no one understands why, your regulator and your customer will have questions you can't answer. So if it can't explain itself, it being the AI, it doesn't belong in your compliance stack. We started integrating AI-based fraud scoring and behavioral analysis, but every flag case still ultimately has to go through manual review because A, GDPR gives users the right to an explanation, and AI needs to support humans, not replace them, especially when accountability is on the line. Also, actually in some places, just decent automation is more resource efficient. Which brings us to the next challenge. No matter how clever our tech, compliance is ultimately going to be a team sport and increasingly an industry-wide one. EU compliance will increasingly rely on collaborative frameworks. From ESG disclosures to AML efforts, no single platform can do this alone. That's why data sharing consortia like the Beacon Network and the MiCA Crypto Alliance and the rules that govern them, especially for travel rules, fraud detection and sustainability, will continue to become more and more critical. We've been implementing the travel rules since 2019 in Switzerland, and we all know it's still a mess. Multiple protocols, not speaking the same language. It's like building Swift for the Tower of Babel with no Rosetta Stone. So self-hosted wallets, some countries will require ownership verification and others don't. But whichever counterparty's jurisdiction is the stronger one, their standard wins. So you can't just learn the standards for your own jurisdiction, you have to build to the highest bar around the world. Which means that you have to know where everyone's standards are. You can't just ignore the developments in the rest of the world. No one can meet that amount of standards in isolation. We need data sharing initiatives, shared templates, cross-jurisdictional onboarding strategies. Without collaboration, we're all just rebuilding the same thing and the same infrastructure in silos. If we treat MiCA and DORA and DAC8 like the cooperative infrastructure challenges they are, we can start building smarter, cleaner, and scalable systems, or we can all be acquired by banks. This is where Web3 native privacy tech like zero-knowledge proofs can actually play a role, because privacy and transparency aren't mutually exclusive if we design our systems right. So here's the takeaway. Compliance isn't just risk management, it's product strategy. It's system architecture, and when you do it right, it might be a competitive advantage. MiCA and DORA are hard, possibly not insurmountable, they just require a different mindset. And we have to balance empathy with structure, flexibility, and accountability. The good news is we already have tools. Design thinking can give a framework, but what we need now is more coordination industry-wide, more clarity, and probably some courage. Because regulations aren't slowing down. The only way through this is forward and probably together. And we don't want to go back to that broken Slack thread with no coffee. That's what we're avoiding. And, well, Bill Gates says AI is coming for all of our jobs, but until then, we might as well design our way into compliance, and someone still has to write the prompts. And with that, I'll end where every good compliance talk should, with a disclaimer. There.